Today's episode is brought to you by Soldier 76.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. How are you? I'm tired.
Bad question.
Let's just focus on me then.
Yeah.
I'm doing great.
You
I feel like I'm on top of the Overwatch world right now, as far as that can go.
You are. You five-headed the meta.
I got pretty close in my estimation, at least as close as I feel like I could have reasonably been expected to get. I didn't nail it. I thought there would be more of an emphasis on the Pharah play.
Mm-hmm.
The Soldier 76 came out of left field for me. I thought we'd see some combination of Tracer, Sombra, Doomfist, and we kind of did, but not really near as much Doomfist as I thought. Definitely none of the Pharah that I thought. Still not sure how I feel about that. I'm wondering what needs to happen with Pharah if taking McCree and Widowmaker out of the meta to do it. I think maybe we'll be seeing some Pharah buffs in the future potentially as well. But yeah, I mean, it definitely shifted to dive. That's what I really think I nailed, was that it wasn't going to become some Orisa Diva bunker strategy just because Mei was still around. We did see some teams still try to do that. Sometimes they were fortunate enough to play against another team that still tried to do that. But for the most part, I think that was definitely the wrong side of the fence to be on for the weekend. If you leaned into the dive, if you unlocked your Tracer players, your Sombra players, everybody's a Soldier 76 player. I think if you're playing DPS and Overwatch,
an FPS game, you are a Soldier 76 player.
You could probably hold that down. But yeah, all things considered, it was a really, really fun weekend. And yeah, I even got the prediction right. Like, I did the whole video. I went into the video just wanting to predict the meta and have it be about that. And then the more I started looking at like how it would affect matches, the more it became obvious to me that I kind of thought Houston was going into the match with a pretty major advantage. And then by the end of the video, the whole thing was just about Houston getting the win. So thank God that happened. And I'm glad it happened in spectacular fashion, because it lets me take a little bit of a victory lap here.
Yeah, you do get to take that victory lap, which we will certainly be talking about in just a bit. But before that, let's of course do a little bit of housekeeping. Guys, make sure you're checking out Foul Play Black Watch Report. They're, of course, cranking out more episodes every week. Foul Play is fantasy Overwatch League play focused with Hebe, Teppo, A. Smith, all keeping you up to date on your fantasy Overwatch League games. You know, it's a hectic time in the world of hero pools and swaps and map-dependent players. If you wanted a nice, easy game, this ain't it. This is why you need to listen to Foul Play to get all of the stats breakdowns there. Blackwatch Report, of course, is the Tier 2 show. Make sure you're checking out Blackwatch Report and making sure to keep tabs on those up-and-comers, especially with, man, I think we were going to talk about a glaring piece missing potentially from a certain Houston Outlaws roster space, or maybe not roster space, but a certain hero that is maybe a glaring miss here. But if you want to see who is playing in contenders and the Tier 3 leagues, make sure to check out Blackwatch Report. And Deathblow, I know you've already kicked around a couple of ideas for another YouTube video. They're coming out every week, and they're getting better and better.
Yes, I definitely appreciate it. Yeah, make sure you guys do subscribe to us on YouTube. Those have so far come out every, Wednesday? I don't know. I'm not awake when I'm actually publishing them, only when editing them the night before. Yeah, Wednesday's right, because Thursday would be way too late, in my opinion. So I really do whatever I can, which included staying up until 5 a.m. on Tuesday night last week. So any and all feedback you guys have on those videos is much appreciated. Liking and commenting on them does a lot to boost their performance, so that's much appreciated as well. Anything you guys can do to help support me there is very appreciated. And yeah, if you don't subscribe to us there, please do. It'll help us get to the 1,000 threshold, which allows me to start to monetize them, things like that, and do some cool things that'll hopefully allow them to get better. So
yes, all of the cool stuff that the cool kids have, we want to be able to keep doing that. And by we, I mean Deathblow, because he is the machine behind the YouTube video content. I am merely a pawn uploading the episodes every week. Don't try to give me any credit for that, because I will not take it. But let's move on here and move right into...
It's tournament talk.
Had a number of really good matches here, a couple upsets, and some predicted values as
actually,
well.
One bit of news, something I forgot to put in the notes, my bad. And it was reflected on stage. The Boston Uprising signed a new main support player, Halo, and yeah, they played him right away this week.
Yeah.
So something to get in there real quick in the news. But yeah, we'll just come up and talk about that a little more once we get to it. So
sure. So I'll give you another one of these.
It's news.
Okay, and now we're going into
It's tournament talk.
got there. Yes. Let's just keep you know what? We got the buttons. Let's keep pressing them. Starting off, we had the Florida Mayhem taking down the Toronto Defiant, and of course, me as a resident Mayhem fan, I was ready for this result the whole time. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't even thinking about that when I wore this morning, but I actually blew the opportunity, because I actually own both of these jerseys, so I could have done the gag that we've talked about doing for so long, but I didn't.
You're dead to me. We have one team that we share, Blevins. It can't go like this.
Well, to give you some good news, though, Houston Outlaws defeated the Paris Eternal 3-0. And to also give you some good news, Washington Justice beat the Boston Uprising 3-1. So you were rewarded for the Defiant loss.
2 out of 3,
yeah.
Not bad.
Next up was, I think, pretty clearly an upset, and B, match of the week here. Paris Eternal winning 3-2 versus the, up until this point, undefeated Philadelphia Fusion. We'll be talking more about that match, I'm sure. We also had New York Excelsior winning against the Washington Justice 3-1, and the Atlanta Reign cleaning up the Boston Uprising at 3-0.
Yeah, we usually do storylines for these matches. I think we should kind of step through them and talk about them a little bit, and to deviate a little bit from the normal plan here.
Sure.
Since it was such a gigantic shakeup in just the way things operate this week going into hero pools, a lot of the teams handled them very, very differently. To start us off, we'll go back to Toronto versus Florida. We did see, I believe, the fate swap. Man, it was so early in the week, and I everything went white.
We definitely
after
saw fate.
Game. Yeah, I know he at least started. I think he played out the whole thing as the main tank. Toronto didn't really make any large scale changes. We saw more Surefour and Logics together, things like that. But overall, Florida got the better of Toronto here. Toronto just looks rough to me, and that's my big takeaway. Is like, they flashed really early, and they made us buy into them and think that they were something that maybe they weren't. And now it seems like the book is out there, and opponents are able to just download them at free will. It's a little disconcerting. Going into hero pools, they're not the only team like this. We'll be talking about one of the two glaring teams here. They're both my teams. They kind of have like an issue at main tank as far as I'm concerned. And it's like the exact opposite issue. For Toronto, it's that Beast is so much more comfortable on the Winston that they don't have the capability to really play in the Reinhardt meta at an elite level. They've shown that by really relying on the dive prior to hero pools, and now Winston's going to be banned this week. So what are they going to do? Are they going to play wrecking ball instead of Winston and continue to dive, or are they going to force themselves to play the Reinhardt? So there's a major problem for Toronto. There's no question what they're going to do, or at least what you're afraid of them doing, and that's them diving you. That's been counterable, especially when McCree is in the hero pool, but it didn't really matter this past weekend. They just kind of got beat by Florida pretty handily, and I don't rate Florida that highly at the moment. So something that really, really concerns me going forward as a Toronto fan. So how are they going to manage this roster? There is clearly talent here. But I thought Kareeves looked weak at times. Kellix has failed to stand out. Kind of all the players I was really most worried about have kind of come back to become problems in the long term here. And then there's also this question of, are they using their DPS correctly?
Right.
So a lot of question marks for Toronto. Their coaching staff looks so good so early. It's very scary to me that it's falling apart this fast. I don't know, Blevins, what are your thoughts there? Obviously you got a foot in both camps here, you dirtbag.
I mean, this is a Tavik jersey in solidarity with Tavik. I have no more official ties to Florida Mayhem, not that I ever did. Except I like their new colors, which this is the third, or the mid-season jersey, or the third jersey. Everything you said is 100% correct. It's a different problem than it was in season 2 for Toronto, because the question was, does Toronto have the talent at all the positions? We talked about Aid, we talked about Roki for a long time, Yakpung, and kind of question, are these guys actually like elite level players? And kind of, I think. And then they had Neko and Ivy and Envy, who are all also very good. And it didn't pan out. Obviously, they had changes. There were talks of some inner turmoil on the team, didn't really pan out. And the rest of their season, really after stage 1, was kind of a flop. Here, I don't think the question is there talent on the team? We have a lot of talent on the team, but is that talent too pigeonholed, like you said, into dive? Is it, given enough, like, if you know exactly what NYXL is going to do, and and you're given enough time to prepare against it, you can beat a team like that. Well, Toronto's not NYXL, so when you're putting them in the same scenario, they're not, they have talent, but it's not so much overwhelming talent that they're able to go heads up in the bad matchup and still overpower it. So if you're not actually able to outskill and overpower through the meta, then something needs to change, either strategically or they need to up their game somehow. And I don't know how you do that. I don't think you can do that in the middle of a season, even with a swap of if you could just take any player and put them into the team. I don't think you actually upgrade. I think you need to work with what you have, maybe bring someone in to get them to that point eventually, but there needs to be some sort of strategic swap or adaptation done by Toronto to actually, maybe it's filling a gap, but when you're just getting hard countered, you're setting your own fate, right? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, you have to at least show an ability to play another style. It doesn't have to be your, what you default to. It doesn't have to be what you're known for, but you have to have some level of efficiency at the other one. And at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, there's a difference between Houston's kind of in the same boat, and we'll be getting to that in a second, but there's a difference there because when they play the dive, they dominate people, right? So they actually excel when they're doing that kind of niche thing that is what they do. And it's very nerve-wracking as a Toronto fan to see that we went into a hero pool meta that was built around dive, right? Like that's what everybody was doing, and they couldn't get success against a team that's in the lower half of the standings there. So it's just really, really headed in the wrong direction fast for Toronto. But I do think, similar to kind of my take on Houston going into the season and when they were initially struggling, and that dwindled fast, and hopefully Toronto turns it around with a similar time frame. But is that there's so much change that was going on with this team, and as you're watching Houston, get their legs under them and find some success. So they didn't do it, have any in the first 2 weeks. It doesn't mean Toronto's headed south now. It doesn't mean they're not going to get some more comfortability as a team, get used to things and perform better later on. And I think that's something that you can definitely expect to see as teams make large scale changes going into a year, that it's going to start very slow and build up, and there's going to be bumpy moments. And right now, as a Toronto fan, you just kind of have to close your eyes and believe that that's what's happening here, because there is enough talent on the roster that I do feel with a degree of certainty that they're going to be better than they've shown in the last couple of weeks, at least.
Yeah, I think there's a balancing act, not even just for Toronto, but for all the teams, with the way that hero pools work. It's like you need to balance like getting really good at a certain meta versus like we need to just get to a certain point very quickly and then just free flow off of that. Like you're not going to be able to keep practicing week in and week out on this. Like eventually like a similar meta will pop back up and you'll be able to pull from that and like be used to that, but you're not like, okay, like maybe it's a long con, not a long con, but like a long game bet that it's like there's more like computations of hero pools where dive is playable, so we're just going to play dive every week, and if it's not good, it's not good, but we're still going to play it. And them playing it every week is getting them better than the other people who are adapting. That's my like tinfoil hat, like 6 head, way outside the box. It's either a 6 head or a 0 head. There's no in between. It's either the best. Yeah. It's either like at the end of the season, you're like, oh my God, they're unbeat. They're so much better than everyone on dive. Or it's like, this was a really dumb premise and you wasted an entire season doing it. And I mean, I don't know which one it is. I mean,
I think there is something to that general thought, at least as far as dive goes, right? Because like, what did we have to do this past weekend to kill off the entire death ball, May, Reinhardt? We didn't even need to touch May. Like May was still allowed to just stay there. So in order to kill that off, we just needed to get rid of Reinhardt, essentially, right? The McCree was another pretty big one. So let's say it does take 2 heroes to completely wipe the meta composition off of the planet. We look at what got banned this time around. It was Lucio, it was Sombra, and it was Winston. And I can still make a dive composition by going Tracer Doomfist with Wrecking Ball.
Yep.
So it's much more resilient of a play style dive is, and I think it's a lot harder to disrupt with something like hero pools. So I do think over time you'll see dive come up more often than not. But at the end of the day, you still have to be able to take advantage of those things that come up, like, May, McCree, and Reinhardt are all in this week. You have to be able to play those heroes because they do shut down dive, right? So it's all a high wire act, and it's part of why I was so pumped with the hero pools experiment this weekend. Going into the weekend, I said, I don't care if this week's meta sucks. What I want to see is May suck. Okay. Even though we didn't take her out, and I think we got there. So when you look at the bans and you go, how can they not ban May again or something like that, I can go, they just didn't do it in name, right? So to me, that's a big boost, that we can have such sweeping impacts in the metagame. I don't think anybody expected to see so much Soldier 76 this weekend, to the point where now he's banned going into next weekend. Like that was crazy. That was fun. That was interesting. And what do you know, on exactly 1 week's notice, the teams figured that out and implemented it and played it. So I don't think there's too much worry for me at this point that they're not going to be able to, handle it and cope with it. And there'll be different levels of success, and the teams that adapt will thrive, and the teams that don't will fall hard. They'll die. But even looking at the weekend, and this will be our transition into the next game, the Paris Eternal, 0-3 against the Houston Outlaws. They couldn't do anything. Ben Best was terrible. Nico struggled to get any value. It was rough. He was coughing into his hands and spreading coronavirus everywhere.
Oof.
It was brutal. He had a really rough game. The whole team did, right? They were trying to use Soon instead of XZ, and it just didn't work out. And on 24 hours notice, they come back and they upset the undefeated Philadelphia Fusion.
Right.
Why? Because they swapped Ben Best for No Smite, and they put XE and Soon out at the exact same time. You're going to tell me it's not fair for people to have 1 week to prepare for a metagame when Paris went from getting dominated, shut down hard by the Houston Outlaws to defeating an undefeated team in 24 hours based off of swaps. It's almost like if they just put some thought into it at halftime and did the same thing, maybe they'd have had a chance, or go, oh, after one map. That's why I want to see teams, and the teams that are going to succeed this year are the teams that put in adaptable, overarching game plans into place where you can pick up pieces and move them and plug and play, and they give players on the team the freedom and the comfortability to go, I can make a decision in the moment and try something and try to beat something without my coach breathing down my neck and being mad at me for throwing away all these hours of scrim time, all this blah 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 blah. If your scrim time is more fluid and you're swapping your players out more often, and maybe that wasn't the way to get bested goats last year, but guess what? That's not the world we live in anymore. It's adapt or die. And that's going to be the way these coaching staffs go. They were always the ones most affected by the hero pools. But they've also got the biggest opportunity for impact. So if I'm a Paris fan, I'm thinking of this as a net positive weekend, even though you got just dumpstered by Houston, because you showed that ability and that capability. That tells me you're a half of a step ahead of everybody else we've seen so far, because nobody's really had to do that. Nobody was decisively beaten by a team perceived to be worse than them going into the game like that. So really until Philly, but we kind of talked about what went wrong for Paris there. As far as Houston goes, they looked really, really strong in the dive. Muma looked really good on the Winston. Blase was dancing all over people on Soldier 76. They were going against kind of the Paris attempting to pull off the double shield bunkery style again, and it really just wasn't working. So he didn't get a lot of pressure there, but he did put in a lot of work. They pulled out the Doomfist at times. Looked really, really strong, and it was something that as a fan I really wanted to see. Obviously, they're going into a 4-week vacation essentially where they don't play for quite a long time now. So I mean, I said it last week, the difference between 1-6 and 0-7 in the stages last year we talked about was a very big deal. 2-5 is a very, very different deal. The list of teams that went 2-5 in a stage and went on to make the playoffs or play-ins was very, very large. 0-7 wasn't. 1-6 was pretty small, but 2-5 wasn't. It was not that uncommon. So it was a big, big win for Houston there. So really, really happy about that. But raised a lot of I think really gave us the backdrop for kind of the poster boy of this is working to me, which was that Paris turnaround. The next match on our list, Houston versus Boston. Boston sucks. I'm sorry.
Wait, Washington versus Boston.
What did I say? Houston. Yeah,
Houston
Washington versus Boston.
Boston
Washington with the 3-1 win there. Washington has a lot of struggles, has a lot of problems. They've also got some standout players that I just don't see from Boston. With their 2 DPS, their 1 main tank, who's a Reinhardt 1 trick. Boston is going to really separate themselves from the rest of the pack here going forward. I think they're
Florida-ing themselves this year.
They're drowning really bad, and they're very lucky they got that win against Houston before Linkser could come in, because otherwise I don't know. It would have been impossible to pick one. I wouldn't have guessed they were gonna going to go winless.
Yeah.
But it would have been near impossible to pick them to win one. But thankfully, we don't have to anymore, and they won't be a statistical anomaly if we're right every single time. But yeah, Paris versus Philly was the match of the week, and probably match of the, I don't know, there's a couple match of the years so far already, but
yeah, man, we've already seen at least one, if not two, like top, I don't want to say top 10 just because I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but top 20 matches all time.
Yeah. Definitely really crazy, this one. It was one of those matches, the maps in and of themselves weren't super closely contested until map 5.
Right.
It was like haymakers were thrown, right? Like Paris came out and dominated the first 2 maps, and then Philly punched right back and went to 5. And then in what is one of the greatest individual team fights I've seen, one of the most fun, entertaining, just great moments in Overwatch, was the end fight of the 3rd point on map 5, right? Like it's ending here, whoever wins. And it was like a Carpe versus Xe showdown. It was Tracer versus Soldier. It felt like 2016 all over again. it was just insane. It was super back and forth. It wasn't even like it was just long and drawn out. It was Philly's winning, it was Paris's winning. Like, I mean, it was really absolutely nuts. If you didn't watch the match, you can honestly probably get away with just watching the 5th map and say that's pretty much what happened through the entire thing. It was really crazy. I know Discord was getting real hyped about it. We got a good number of Philly fans who were a little heartbroken at the end of that one, because it was quite a ride, and I wasn't even invested as a fan in that way. So yeah, a lot of fun. Bubs, what did you think of that fight and that match in particular?
It was crazy because not only was it haymakers back and forth, but it's like such a roller coaster. Because, and I mean, this whole season has been like this, where we're even like season 1 compared to season 2, it's like our assumptions are tested every week. It's never a like, well, we can wash our hands of this week. This one's done. Let's move to the next one. It's like, nope, there's upset potential everywhere.
We say that, and then next week we'll be talking about how it's not possible, but
well, it can be. That's right. The beauty of it is that, well, if an upset happens every week, well, then you're just like picking one to happen, but then sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? That's true random. There could be a week where everyone is an upset, although I doubt that. That just probably means we don't know what we're talking about.
Which is
also possible. But you take Paris Eternal, who just got 3-0'd by Houston Outlaws, by the way. Comes out 2-0 versus Philly Fusion. That already is a feat in and of itself. Philly comes back and does what Philly does, which is fight and go to map 5s. As his DP felt the need to point out every other minute that Philly loves going to map 5s. But I mean, what more could you ask for? You've got a great match. I mean, we saw this is the type of match that we don't see without hero pools. I'm putting it out there, because Carpe is a good tracer, but it's not his McCree. It's not his Widowmaker. He doesn't have, like, he's not that. It's close.
You might want to back off of that.
I mean, but there were times where he was losing the fights. Like, he was losing. He lost 1v1s too soon. They lost. Like, he didn't put the team on his back as much as we've seen him do before. Which, I mean, again,
he didn't in this one. That's for sure.
And again, this is, we all assume that everyone is playing at 100% all the time, which obviously isn't the case. People have bad days or off days, and other people have amazing days when you're just having a good day. Soon seemed to be really, really on this match. And I don't know, man. It was an amazing match. You definitely need to watch it. I think this is the type of thing. Here's the other thing with hero pools is, like, if it's just, May, McCree, Reinhardt meta, and like giving Carpe extra time is just going to make him even better, right? Like, having that switch, some people are just going to be able to handle the change better. And like, Soon obviously fits right into the Tracer. Carpe's good at everything, but Soon is really, really good in Tracer. So I honestly don't know that we see this match play out as closely as it did if hero pools exist, or don't exist rather.
Yeah, it was thought of as the close one going into it, and then it flipped back and forth on its head, right?
Right.
The loss to Houston made it a perceived blowout. Paris just didn't have a chance because we love to fall into those traps where what we just saw is what the team
Is
absolutely
what they are.
is, and it's just it's impossible not to. It's not even a criticism, right? It just how do you not react to watching a team get brutalized by somebody that was 1-4,
right,
or 1-5 going into the game? Like, of course you're going to think that.
Right.
But it just, at the end of the day, looking back with hindsight, you go, no, like they just had the wrong tank in, and you can say that now because but I loved, like I said earlier, the flexibility that Paris showed in this game. That was specifically the highlight to me, finding a way to make it work with what you have instead of just running something out there because you scrimmed on it. I think that's absolutely crucial. I thought Philly, they only had one match this weekend, so they didn't have the ability to show the same kind of a thing, but they did roll out EQO as a support player in map 1, put him there on Brig.
Yikes.
And I mean, he played their Brig for him all last year. So it makes a whole lot of sense. And going into it, I'm like, they're just 5-heading right now, and they're vibing hero pools thing in a way that I don't think other teams are. And then it really didn't work. And then all of a sudden, Funny Astro is back in there. But they showed a willingness to do it on a map-by-map basis. They go, this makes sense. He's got more hours on Brig.
Right.
That wasn't the main support's job in that meta, so Astro wasn't doing it. Why would we have him do it? We've got this guy who's got X hours with these guys, all these reasons. And then, didn't work, blew it up.
Yep.
And they just went back to what was default, how the team functioned before that, disrupted communications and chemistry too much. We need our main support back in. Whatever the actual reason was, they decided to do that. Maybe it was always the plan that it was for that one map. I don't know. I don't like it then, but it is what it is. We'll never know. So they get the benefit of the doubt that they just kind of reacted and made the right call, and took them a map. They ate another map loss after that, but then got it together, made a match out of it, really almost turned it around and got the reverse sweep. So, flexibility is the name of the game to me right now, and what I want to see most from these teams as they go through this process, a willingness to adapt and change. And I thought both of those teams did that. So it was a loss for Philly, but I don't think it was a bad one. You won 5 or 6 or whatever you'd won in a row. You could afford this one.
Sure.
Paris is a good team, and it was nice to get that affirmation as an Outlaws fan, though, that they beat a good team. They didn't beat a team that was unable to function.
Property.
It was a little retroactive confirmation of what I saw, and affirmation, and I kind of think of the roster as a whole. So that was great to see. But make sure you guys watch this one. Like we said, map 5 at a minimum, if you're not going to watch the whole thing or don't have a lot of time. It's a fine option as well. Don't feel like you're missing out too much if you just watch map 5.
I don't know.
New York versus Washington, Blevins. What'd you think of your boys?
Man, I was getting, I don't want to say scared, but man, whenever they come out and lose one, even though they tend, I mean, more often than not, statistically, if we're just looking at sheer numbers, they're more than likely going to come back. But man, I hate when they get that first loss, when they start off 0-1. They tend to do that. Which
it's so rough when you need to experience what the fans of at least 16 of the other teams in the league have to experience on a weekly basis.
I don't want that. I want them to win 5-0 every single week. I don't ever want it to be close. But what it really makes me think is that, man, they kind of have a control issue or something, because like I feel like they have lost that first map to more teams than they should have. Like yes, they have a good number of 3-0s as well, but they also obviously have losses, and like they lost to the first map to Washington. They lost the first map to London in week 1. I'm sure they've lost it in other places as well. It's like maybe there's actually something about Control that it's not working for them, and maybe they need to do more of the Philly style of like, hey, let's change up our lineup for Control, and then bring in the other players. But at the end of the day, whether they win 3-2 or 3-0, I don't actually care. It's just less stressful when they win 3-0 for me.
Yeah, as long as you're winning enough of that, the map record doesn't matter. You're
Right.
good. I was trying to get the exact substitutions that they did, because that was my big thing for them, as I was not a very big fan of how they handled their substitutions, right? Because if you're looking at a meta, and they did this a lot where they played I think I might have found them. They played a lot of Tracer and Sombra together. And to me, if you're in a meta where that's your goal and what you want to do, isn't SBB and Nene the duo that you want that to be with? At least to me it is, because then you get the ability to keep SBB out there for the leadership that's talked about. And I think you can see they do look better to me on average when SBB is in there. So it worked out. They got the win, like you said, but it's not smooth sailing. They did obviously drop the map. Listen, Nene came in and played great, and I think he was player of the match in the game. I have no criticisms about the way he played. I'm arguing that I want him in there, right? I'm saying I would like him to be on the stage just alongside SBB, and I think that would make the most of the hero pools of the players. But I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities to use Libero, and I think making him play Sombra when I think SBB might be a little better at it is just a little bit right. At the end of the day, it's nitpicky. They won 3-1. It wasn't like it was crazy close or anything like that. But I guess when you're NYXL and you're going against a team I think is bottom 4 in the standings, bottom 5 in the standings, then I expect you to dominate. And if you don't, I'm going to kind of look at why. So that's really all I'm doing. But again, it's first week of hero pools. Maybe they're just trying to figure it out just like everybody else. This is what they tried this time. Maybe they try something else next time. I don't know. It's not really a negative until it stops working, and it worked here. At least technically, and technically correct is the best kind of correct. So
true.
And then last match, have I said Boston sucks?
Yeah, Boston sucks.
Okay, Boston sucks. Atlanta won 3-0, so we can
move
on from that. Although Edison's debut, it was cool, but it's not a negative that you beat Boston, but use them against a real team. And then we'll talk.
Oh, no, get his jitters out against.
Sure. Yeah,
Boston.
Great place to do it. But I just can't, I don't feel like I can evaluate his performance very well, because I think you would have done pretty good in his spot there.
Oh.
If you took that as a positive for you, then great.
Assured. So you're saying I'm an Overwatch League caliber player. Wow.
If that's what you heard.
Also, so you're saying I'm no, it's too long of a title. I was going to say I was using that for the title, but oh no, I was going to use, oh man, I forgot it. Oh no, it was okay. So this is going back, but I didn't bring it up when it was relevant. So you're just gonna have to bear with me here. So it's relevant, just not to what we just talked about. We were talking about two sorts of strategies here for hero pools, and this kind of ties into maybe into the next section, which I'll play the button for.
Oh, let's break it. Yeah!
Talking about hero pools and different strategies, and one thing that I think is really cool about hero pools as a concept is the fact that we have the you're rewarded for a couple of different things, and those things, if those things can compete against each other, and teams can favor one versus the other, which is really cool. You can be really super adaptable and also understand the meta and strategy really well, and have an advantage against a team that's maybe higher skilled than you. You can be really good at adapting. You can also be rewarded for, like we talked about with maybe the strategy for Toronto, is just keep playing the same sort of comp no matter what, and just keep getting better at that so that when it lines up, you're going to be even better than the other people who are running it. So you can either adapt, or you can do something like Toronto, which is play dive. So you can either adapt or dive. Really stupid joke.
It was fine, but the setup was too long.
Setup was way too long. It's okay. I'm half asleep.
3 new gray hairs in my beard.
But
wait, they're not new.
No, those. I didn't want to break your spirits there. I had another point, but I don't remember what it was, and it probably wasn't good. But let's talk about the new hero pool.
I was gonna say that's a good, decent segue. So
yeah, there we go. It actually is kind of decent. Soldier 76, Sombra, Winston, and Lucio banned. And Deathbow is our resident 5-head for meta calls. What do you think for this new meta?
I mean, I think we're gonna be looking at a little bit what I thought just banning the most played heroes would have been, at least for the first 2 weeks. It's just gonna flip flop a little bit right back to where we were before. It's almost going to be harder to have. I mean, the lack of Sombra will make it harder to counter that Reinhardt, Diva, May, McReaper composition that we've been seeing. I think we might see more of the Reaper than the McCree because the Lucio's gone. Now you've got the Brig, and you want to play that brawly style where you need to be in the other team's face. So maybe you see a little bit more Reaper than McCree than in the past, but McCree and Widow are going to be back. So you're talking about maps like Havana with those long sight lines. We made a lot of fun of Houston, and rightfully so, because they were allowed to just switch to the Lucio forehead when they were playing on Havana and like couldn't leave spawn because they were trying to play the Brig and Anna combo that just wasn't working. That's the one thing that maybe I'm worried about with this hero pool, is we could see some really ugly stretches from some teams where they can't get out of that spawn door. That map, like Junkertown, things like that, like without the speed to just rush through it, it might be ugly for some of the less coordinated teams. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the division that's being played so much right now has a good chunk of them, and just the teams that are recycling over these weeks have a lot of teams that I think fall into that category. So hopefully the maps are a little lighter there. I haven't looked into all of them like I did last week, to save us from that a little bit. But I'm really interested to see what they do to actually break out of that, right? Because it was so easy to just play the Lucio, but now you've kind of got to beat it. So do you need to start to see maybe Widowmakers on attack to clear things out for you and open up that sight line? Like, do you have to play really pick oriented and then switch afterwards? There's a lot that can be done to counteract that, and it's not just as easy as switching heroes this time. So I think there's going to be a lot of fun in seeing them figure that out. But things should, for the most part, I think, fall back into something that looks very similar to what we saw before the first hero pool came in. So
maybe go ahead.
I was just gonna say McCree, May, and Reinhardt together, very good recipe for success, and since it's where they all were before, I think that's where they'll go.
Yeah, but again, I think even just taking out one little piece could certainly be. I mean, it depends on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. Like, what does taking out the Lucio actually do? Like, what does it directly do? And then what does the counter to that? Like, I think maybe it'll be very interesting to see how we have a very similar to or I guess 2 weeks ago meta, when we have a similar to that, but just a little bit different.
Watch this be the week where Farah dominates as the hit scans come back into play, because nobody can get out of line of sight of the rockets, so they're able to get, what do I know anymore?
Right. If that's the case, then
I feel like I can figure out what play style is going to be popular. But trying to figure out exactly what heroes are going to be best. Man, if Soldier came out of nowhere this week, I've lost confidence in picking specific heroes.
If Soldier came out of nowhere this week, then you mean last week? Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if Soldier comes out of nowhere this week, I would also be very surprised, considering he's actually banned out of the game.
Yes.
But yeah, I think another thing that will be interesting is if teams like, because it's not like the teams have infinite time and are practicing it so much that they know, like if we assume that, let's say Goats, for instance, last year got to, like, it's like, what level are we on? It's like level 1 is this, then level 2 is the counter that, level 3 is let's say that they're at max level, right? Like after so much time they got to that level where, like, and it's just like how low or high do you go to counter that? We're at, like, very early on in that. So even if the meta goes back to what it was, there are some teams that may have gotten to that next level in the course of playing throughout their week, right? Like, we could see people coming into a week like this with a counter to the strategy that's already there, like, which would be super interesting if some teams are, like, actually workshopping it so much. It's like, okay, we didn't play this because we didn't find it, we didn't think about it, and, like, on the plane ride home, we thought about, hey, what if we tried, Bastion against the May comp? It's like, oh my God, it's unbeatable. Obviously, that's probably not what's going to happen. But if it does happen, I'm the new analyst. I get to take I get to be on the desk. That's what you have to promise me, Overwatch League. If Bastion sees an amount of play, I get to be on the desk one of the weeks.
Just heard from Blizzard. They said no.
They said no, and also sending a cease and desist letter to me immediately, just to stop talking. Not the show, just to me specifically to stop talking.
I was chatting with Jeff in our Kings Row.
Yeah.
Which is always mid-episode.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yep. Always play. The server's only live while High Noon Podcast is live. That's how how. It's a weird.
It's the only way you can beat me, to be honest, is if I'm distracted and podcasting at the same time. I'm unstoppable.
Makes sense. Yeah, so I'm going to be really interested to see if teams are actually going to take that route and actually.
Before we get into games, and while we're kind of talking about how teams approach, have you given any thought to, like, how you might structure a practice now, given this? Like, what would you maybe do if you were a coach of a team? How would you approach your scrim blocks going forward?
Practice. We're talking about practice. I had to do it. I haven't given it any thought until right now, but I think if I'm a coach for this and you need to structure, I mean, I think a lot of the work has to be done up front on the code. Like, the theory has to be done up front.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we actually going to see? Okay. Are we going, and who's our matchup? Okay, if I'm NYXL, I'll just take NYXL, for instance. If I'm NYXL, I've got one match. It's against Atlanta Reign. I'm probably favored on paper, but also the Atlanta Reign is a very good team. They've beaten us before, et cetera, et cetera. So, and also they're kind of a wild card. Man, it would be tough. I think you need to. I mean, if it's me coaching, I want to try to counter what they are going to do to counter us, because I think they're going to try to counter NYXL because that's how they win against them, right? Head to head in a vacuum, NYXL probably wins this.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to counter. I want to try to, like, get ahead of that. Now, what that actually is.
So you want to, like, just play really reactionary, zone in on how they like to operate, and see if you can use that to adapt your game plan?
I feel like I want to do that when I have one match for the week, and when I'm a team that's probably favored, but also not a huge favorite, if, like, much of a favorite at all in this current environment.
Sure. Yeah, because what I was thinking today, the kind of thought I had is I almost feel like I do scrims without pools. Right, I would just, like, find if possible. Like, you obviously have to have an opponent willing to do it.
Right.
But say you go in and there's no hero pool enforced in the scrim block, right?
Yeah.
And you're the coach and you're standing behind your players, you're watching them. And my Ana player dies, I tap him on the shoulder and say Ana's banned. and he has to come back on a completely different hero, and he's got to then find a way to, given the options he has,
Right.
adapt and still make the composition work. And
Right.
it's not always going to. Sometimes that's going to literally cost you your scrim, but then
Yeah.
you have a really valuable conversation after the map or after the scrim.
Mhm.
Hey, what what was it about? What did you need? What could you have done? Is
Mhm.
maybe your support duo able to make a hero
Right.
pick that works to
Mhm.
adapt to that, or go from there and throw the opponent out and just get to that. I talked about having a really adaptive, reactive
Yeah.
strategy, and just get to the point where your players, and then maybe your last scrim of the week before the thing, you go, okay, you're playing with the hero pool now. Every match start like you're assuming it's NYXL. So what we know about their pick rates,
Right.
use that to inform your original pick, and then
Mhm.
adapt to what's actually out there, right? Because you're not playing against NYXL. So pretending like the Hanzo's and
Right.
McCree is only so valuable, right? If he's
Right.
not playing it, he's not playing it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know, just kind of a thought, right? Because it's clear they've got to shake things up, and it felt to me like a way that they could. And listen, it's going to hurt them early. Like any team that goes to
Right.
my strategy is going to have a rough couple of weeks in the first few hero pools. But I think at the end of it, or maybe you start next season with an approach like that, or something along those
Right.
lines, because they're not going to be scrimming with hero pools before the season when there's no hero. They don't know what it is. What are they going to do? Guess at
I-
them randomly? That doesn't seem productive.
Right. I mean, that's the type of thing that you see. It's almost like a fundamentals thing, right? Like you get down to the core, and like if you're playing against a team that is fully locked and loaded, and you're like, okay, well, we're playing this game and I'm going back to basketball here. You're only shooting layups. Can't shoot anything further out than a layup. You're probably going to lose, right? Because they're able to play threes, like they're, whatever, they can adapt to that. But like, and then it's like the next one, it's like only shoot 15 footers, only shoot threes. You're probably going to lose those games. But at the end, like you might be, you're able to find really creative ways to like find a layup when a lot of teams are just like,
Right.
oh no, just kick it out. And it's like, actually, that's not putting you in a good position when I'm finding a really creative way to get a layup because all I can shoot is a layup. Taking away all of the games that you lost in scrims, you're going to be in a better position at the end of the day. So I really like that idea.
It
As a
takes
concept.
the scrim. Right. Who knows if it
I don't know if you can do that in practice, right?
But it takes the idea of a scrim away from being a dress rehearsal for a match and
Right.
turns it into being a practice exercise.
Yeah.
And with your time limited the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
for all I know, it would be a solid way to think.
Yeah, that would
Um,
be really interesting because I think like how I would be interested, and this is something that would literally you could really only get the opinion from players and maybe coaches that would be relevant because like I have no clue. But how relevant is it to if I'm let's say NYXL and I'm playing against a contenders team? Is it super relevant that I'm like, are you actually getting good practice from a scrim just playing a match against a
Well,
team?
as a former contenders player, man, I haven't gotten to say that, but it's no less true than it was the last time I got to say it. As a former contenders player, more accurately, as an open division, I can tell you, I mean, from that perspective, it's not too far off what your scrims are at, right? Like the players always have the agency to press the H button and switch, and you only have kind of so much control over them. And the discipline on that is much greater when there's a coach standing over your shoulder and
Right.
you've got a team's logo on your jersey and
Mhm.
all that stuff. So it's clearly not the same. But at the end of the day, um, if you're a team that doesn't play this coming weekend, what are you doing in scrims? Playing this hero pool?
Right.
Or do you find another team that doesn't play in this patch and
Right.
in this weekend, and scrim against them in a way that may be more advantageous for you long term, and maybe that's your off week plan. Maybe my week's your off week plan, and your plan is we've got one
Mhm.
game this week plan, and maybe it's a different plan when you've got two
Yeah.
games that week. I really don't know. There doesn't have to be one right answer here.
All I'm saying is that me and you as co-coaches, or you as a head coach and me as an assistant coach, is the perfect combination. That's all I'm saying.
Your first duty as assistant coach is to go sell popcorn in the stadium.
Did you? Okay, hold on. This is mildly related. Did you see that story in the NHL? I think 2 weeks ago.
One of my favorite things in sports that's ever happened.
It made me immediately think about the hot dog thing. So for those of you who don't know, there was I don't remember what team. You can
Carolina Hurricanes.
Carolina Hurricanes had their goalie and their backup goalie, and was there a third goalie that also got injured?
So it was an away game for Carolina. They were playing in Toronto.
Okay.
And the way the NHL works is that every team has an emergency goaltender that is in the building for every game. Okay. Whichever team needs this emergency goaltender gets this emergency goaltender. So this 42-year-old Zamboni driver was an employee of the Toronto Maple Leafs when both of the Carolina Hurricanes goaltenders go down in an injury against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he gets a Carolina jersey, Carolina Hurricanes jersey with his name on the back of it. He goes in the middle of the second.
It had his name on it?
Yeah.
How did they get that?
They pressed it on there. They have the numbers. They have all
amazing. That's amazing.
In the clutch. Pretty sure it had. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it had his name on it. Or maybe they were showing. I saw somebody making a thing, like I saw a video of it. Maybe it was after the fact or to sell them. I really don't know. But yeah. So it just crazy, right? This is a 42-year-old guy that coaches in like the 7th degree minor leagues.
Yeah.
You know what?
Is literally a Zamboni driver.
Yep. He said he's been close before. He said 2 or 3 other times he's had to suit up, but he's never actually skated out onto the ice. But yeah, to me, one of the coolest things that's ever happened in sports.
Definitely.
And I think a cool story to highlight for Overwatch League fans, because when they see things happen and you're like, that can't be the right way to do things. The NHL is a system that puts a 42-year-old Zamboni driver in net. Okay, in the middle of a game to play against, he won. He got an NHL win. Just nuts. Like the whole thing was crazy, and it worked. It's crazy like a fox because it worked.
Yeah,
like it's the silliest, stupidest system. I also probably couldn't come up with a better way for the ridiculous emergency situation than it was, sort of a thing. But I don't know, super cool. I meant to bring it up the week it happened.
I also meant to, and I completely forgot that it happened, but you reminded me with the popcorn thing.
That's your path to the stage.
Yeah, I need to be an official for the Toronto Homestands. I need to be an official emergency Lucio player.
I'll be there, guys. You don't need to use
I'm the official second emergency Lucio player.
I was going to say, I promise you, Roki's not that sick. You don't need either of us. But if you think you do, so hit me up.
I'm ready. Put me in,
but
coach.
If you go in, then nobody's selling popcorn. So.
Oh, I'm doing both. Okay, I'm playing. See, here's the thing. They're playing on the stage. I'm up there on my Switch.
He's throwing armor packs on Brig and popcorn 3 rows down.
I'm playing over. I've still got the popcorn on. I'm throwing it out and I'm playing in the game on my Switch while I'm playing. That's the real strategy.
With a t-shirt cannon going.
Filled with popcorn. Wow, we got wildly off topic. Let's talk about some matches here. Let's start with let's start with Florida versus the Paris Eternal, because we are going to be in Florida at the Watsco Center at the University of Miami. It's a pretty cool venue. I didn't know that they were doing any at schools.
Yeah, I didn't know it was part of the campus until I put it together. So I'm really interested to see kind of how that works out. Mm-hmm. I also think it's low-key brilliant. Like, college students love video games. It just seems like a really good fit. If you have
a really easy way to get butts and seats if you need to.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, so Florida versus Paris. I think we're going to be back to carry on for the mayhem here. Okay. Just to make sure.
I pressed the wrong button at first, but we got there.
All right. Well, as long as we got there in the end, that's all that Yeah, the Wayward Son should be back in at the main tank. It seems to me like it might be a Winston Reinhardt split there for Florida. I think the hero pool oddly favors them a little bit.
It's not going to be a Winston split.
No, I know. I think there's the main tanks are split. Fate on Winston and Carry on Reinhardt. So that's why I think it's a Carry on week. I think the hero pool low key helps Florida a little bit. Chris is not very good at the Lucio. It's out of his hands now. He's not allowed to play it anymore. He looks much better to me on some of the other options. So hopefully they're able to find something that works a little better for them. Paris sold me. I mean, they could not have done more for my personal take on them right last week. They punted to my team, which I desperately wanted, despite my opinion and logic going into it initially at face value. Obviously I came around and picked it, but and then also rallied, figured it out, like did everything they needed to do to make me feel confident in them. But we can also just kind of throw last week out for our analysis here. I don't think we're going to be looking at them competing against Dive or anything like that. So they're just going to go back to being the really, really strong team that they had been for the first 4 weeks of the season. So I'm going to give Paris the 3-0 here.
3-0. Ooh.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I'm probably going too far against Florida and Washington both in my analysis of them right now, but I'm really bitter that neither of them are leveling up like I thought at least one of them would. Like I really looked at the two and go, one of these two teams is going to make it. I don't know who, and just neither of them seem to want it, so I'm getting frustrated and maybe punishing them too much. But yeah, I'll go 3-0.
Yeah, I can't do 3-0. Give me a 3-1. Maybe I think maybe even a 3-2, but I am definitely giving it to Paris. I'll go 3-1 for the official rating here. 3-1 Paris. Yeah, I mean, let's see the level up. Paris really does seem to, despite the loss to Houston, I think they're looking really good. Soon has really sort of come into his own, and I mean. Oh, let's see it. Next match.
Let's not see him until we need him again. Not this week though. No soon.
Right. Soon we'll see him. Soon. I still love that happens because it does definitely sound like booze, at least on the broadcast. Even though we know
it's like it's like Bruce Smith. We had Bruce Smith. Everybody was Bruce. Yeah, same thing. Love
it. Saying boo or boo earns. Next up is Florida Mayhem versus the Boston Uprising. Have we mentioned that Boston sucks? Or
yeah, I mean, it won't affect him this week, but they lost Axiom too. He's on leave of for a medical procedure or something like that, so he's going to need some time to recover from that. This team is, to me, I mean, it's going to line up for them. They're going to have a puncher's chance at this. I just did a whole thing about how I might be going too far in my hate for Florida.
Yeah.
Give me Florida 3-1 here. I'm even putting my hatred aside. I'm that low on Boston. I really think they're in trouble.
I'll take the 3-1 as well. All right. Next up, we have the match that we alluded to earlier in our some of our other discussions. We've got NYXL versus the Atlanta Reign. It's got it seems like it has match of the week territory written on it.
I think it is. It's our opener for the weekend too, so it starts really, really strong.
Yeah.
It's the one I'm definitely the most interested in seeing. And my questions, I want them answered on the Atlanta side of things. Is it Baby Bay, who I think leaves you open to being much more beatable than you are otherwise? Or are you going to find out who's the actual best hit scan player on your team and start to use Sharp and Erster in these kind of situations with the McCree and the Widowmaker? Baby Bay was a stopgap fill-in when you lost DeFran and you were screwed, and he did really, really well for you. I don't think he's your future. I don't think he represents the highest potential that you have, and if you don't bring the highest potential that you have, I don't think you beat the New York Excelsior. They just made the switch. I'm not super confident in it. I'm going to go with Atlanta 3-2 here, assuming they do make the switch. Keeps it super, super close. But I think this one's at least likely to be heavily picked on the NYXL side, and it's super, super flippable, I think, especially if they make that roster switch. Also, who knows? Maybe it's Who Are You on May again. I really don't know. So like they did one game where it was Libero and it really great, and it was against Florida, and maybe Who Are You would have looked great too.
Yeah.
So I'm question marks on both sides what they're going to do with their DPS players. Yeah, I'll go Atlanta, assuming it's not Baby Bay, but I would flip it if I knew that it would be Baby Bay.
Man, Who Are You on the May really is giving me.
Did I just give you a downer right there?
No, you gave me flashes of Janice. You made me think of Janice, which is always a bad thing when in reference to NYXL and winning. It is definitely close, and if you're playing it on pick'em flips alone, I think this is probably a very valuable flip.
Yeah, I favor New York.
Definitely.
I'm just making a calculated flip decision and picking it.
That being said, obviously NYXL 5-0 not close.
Easy clap.
Not even remotely close. But in reality, a very valuable flip to make. But NYXL 5-0. Next up, we have London versus Atlanta. I think this is a tale of two tiers here, two different tiers. Atlanta seems like they're at least a tier and a half, or at the very least a solid one tier above London. Now, London, I think, credit where credit's due, has performed better than we initially thought that they were going to, but we also did not think very much of them at all.
Well, to kind of amend that a little bit, we have as a team of all rookies that we'd never seen, that came in. We talked about them as another slow starter that had the potential to, but are they a play-ins team instead of are they a playoff or a play-ins team with their old roster?
Right.
So this is definitely a case of the news, the talk, the conversation was so negative surrounding this team. I don't know that we really thought they would be bottom. I mean, maybe starting out bottom 2 or 3, something like that. But definitely starting to put it together a little bit. They're competitive. I think they're in that middle lower pack. I've got them a bit above Florida and Washington right now. Glister's been really, really good at times. Just absolutely stands out on the McCree. He'll have that that option and that capable, the ability to make that pick this week. So there is some chance here, but Atlanta to me is just like you said. This is a tier difference conversation. It's winnable for London. It's not pickable for London.
Right.
So give me Atlanta here, but if Glister can play McCree, they can take a map. So Atlanta 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also flippable. You gotta favor Atlanta here.
Atlanta did lay an egg not too long ago, so
that is true. This would be a big statement game for London. I like you said, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think it is a tier difference, but like this is a placement game for London. They level up if they win this, I think, or at least like put themselves.
They level up in my
position.
mind if they 3-2 it. Yeah.
Yeah, it puts themselves
lose it 3-2.
Right. Puts themselves in a position to level up. That being said, I mean you can take your pick between the NYXL Atlanta and London Atlanta match and flip one of them, but don't flip both of them. I don't think, unless you're an absolute mad lad. Give me Atlanta. I'll take the 3-1 as well. Next up, we'll run back London, who's playing against Philadelphia Fusion. I don't think I can call a Paris 3-2 versus Philly again with London, though. Again, they do have a storied history, though. Again, that was a completely different London team, so take it for what it's worth. All that being said, I'm going to pick Philly here. 3. Do I want to give them? I'll go with a 3-0. I'm going a 3-0 Philly just because I have not given a 3-0 yet. I've given a 5-0, but that doesn't count.
I'm right there with you. I think Sato was before Overwatch League known better for his Winston, but to me and it's very little Winston we've gotten to see, right? But the eyeball test just tells me that his Reinhardt's better right now. So I think this is going to be much closer to comfort territory.
This is from the person who made a montage of him whiffing Reinhardt ults, by the way. So
fact. He misses a lot of them. He also farms up a lot of them to miss. So it's a mixed bag for sure with Philly and Sato, but it's much more positive than negative this year. I'm pretty safe there. I don't think they have a major problem getting away from the Lucio. They've shown they've got options for people they think that can play Brig. Boombox is still kicking around on the bench in case they wanted to get really nutty and like play Zenyatta with Anna or something like that and roll 2 flex supports. So, I don't think Philly has to worry about hero pools in the way that a lot of other teams do, at least as long as the Sato train is still on its tracks. So, I'm going to go 3-0 for
all right, and our last match.
Don't make me do it.
Last match here: Toronto Defiant versus the Washington Justice. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I
don't want to say it out loud.
I know. But here's what I'll say. Toronto's got to show it, right? We're past the point of the name recognition, the skill potential. That's not worth anything anymore, right? In terms of evaluations, like it's put up or shut up. We've seen this a lot with different teams. It's really the Misfits organization in Florida Mayhem in a lot of ways have done this a lot. Where on paper they've got a pretty decent team and just don't do it. Toronto is finding themselves there as well, which is not great. So at this point, for me, Toronto needs to start actually showing results and showing they need to be showing progress at least in the positive direction before we can start picking them to win versus non-Boston teams, I think. So for me, I'll give them a map, but I got to go with Washington 3-1 here.
I want to give them the map. I really do. I just don't think I can. I mean, the wins for Toronto came against the Paris Eternal, which they were even pre-Hanbin. They didn't even have
literally game 1 of season 3.
Yeah, game 1 of season 3. This was as far away as it's possible to have been. And the next one was against
Houston.
I'm blanking on it. Yeah, it was against Houston. So and that was in Houston's they lost to Houston. Who was their other win against?
I thought they beat Houston. No, they didn't beat Houston. You're right. They won against, was it Boston? Did they play Boston? Okay.
Did they win twice?
That is also a good question.
Anyways, we'll skip over that since we're losing our minds. But they're 1-4. They haven't beaten anybody else. So that's the only time they've won, and they have been trying to ignore the Reinhardt meta and play dive, and I've got to think that's for a reason. When I've not seen good results when they've run the Reinhardt, and they take every opportunity they can not to run it, it makes me think it gives them their worst chance to win it.
Yep.
I think they're right on par with Washington overall. I think they're slightly more talented across the board. Maybe that's even close to about on par. But right now I'm just not seeing it come together at all on the stage.
Yep.
I think it will, but I was just here with Houston, and when I finally closed off my heart and my brain to the idea that they were going to start winning again, Houston immediately flipped it around.
Sports magic.
I'm closing my mind and my heart to Toronto being a good team this year, in hopes that it does the exact same thing and turns around on its head. I'm going to go Washington here, 3-0.
Yes.
died a little bit inside.
Unless you are a strong and firm believer of voodoo, don't pick Toronto this week. But
Yeah.
that is going to be the end of our matches this week. Another week without seeing a lot of our other division teams, obviously due to the global climate right now, but such is life. We're getting accustomed to these teams. It feels a lot like a season 1 in terms of the teams.
Yeah, it's a smaller team pool. Yeah. If you are a fan of one of those teams, I did watch a little bit of the Avast companion stream, and Nero was there. They're scrimming every single day. They're still super active. I don't know exactly what's going on but it sounded like he may have been headed back to Korea or something like that. So I don't know if they're coming up with a plan to maybe play the games not in front of a crowd or what they're doing. We also did have OGE and Mirror, some gladiators, nutbags, yelling and screaming about how they had a match tomorrow on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I tweeted it from the account, but it was so weird. Even at the time, I didn't really believe it was going to happen, but it was strange. And I thought, maybe means there's something going on, right? Like the players, I don't know. I don't know why they're doing that. Why are you giving your fans false hope that they're going to get to watch you play and they're not playing? It's just dumb. Stop it. But yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but the fact that they already tried to reschedule them once and then had to stop again makes me think we might be moving fast on these. Obviously, start playing them before you have to cancel it. You know what I mean? There's two sides of the coin. You don't want to keep canceling stuff that you've already rescheduled twice, but at the end of the day, if you don't even try to reschedule it and get them in, when are you ever going to? So keep an eye on that. Another thing I thought was really interesting is they were all talking about how good Zen was in the meta in the stream and however, and they were watching it too, right? Because they were obviously watching the games, and Nero's like, this is like watching a completely different game to me. Nobody's playing Zenyatta in my scrims. I thought you were all trolling me when you were talking about how impactful he was going to be in these games this weekend. He goes, this is like Bizarro world to watch. So I'm super pumped to see them start playing on the other side of the ocean, because they've got this whole other thing going on, and then the hero pools are shared, it's going to just make things crazy. You're going to start to see coaches staying up watching the Eastern matches and then trying to adapt it into a strategy to play. And they're like, it's going to be super, super cool. If they're keeping up, if hero pool meta and everything is keeping up with the two separate metas from separating them on different sides of the world, it's going to be crazy. So keep an eye out for that stuff. Hopefully we start to get those rescheduled soon, even if it means more cancellations. I don't care. Let's start doing something. I'm twitchy. I want to see them.
Yeah, I mean that is really cool to think that we're actually going to have like a regionalized meta, because they've actually been like walled off. Literally. That's, I mean,
team then sharing scrim results.
Right? Why would you? That would be silly.
No reason.
So that'll be very interesting to see. Cannot wait for that. Really like second season start. Like we don't have stages, but also we kind of in a way do. We're just seeing the other half of the league play, which is really kind of cool. Really makes it feel different and impactful, which is awesome. So, but that's gonna be it for this episode. Thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you're checking us out everywhere on the internet: High Noon Podcast, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all of that stuff. Again, guys, YouTube, big push right now for us, YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're watching those videos that Deathbow's putting out. Even, whatever opinions you have, even a, hey, good job, or we like this video, or hey, you suck, don't make videos anymore. Those comments really do help, and hitting just the thumbs up is super, super helpful for the growth of those, and it's all going to be very, very helpful. So please make sure you're checking us out on YouTube.
Also, my sanity while I watch analytics and try to figure out what I did wrong, what I did right.
I would say for your sanity, don't hone in on that, but I know you're going to anyway, so I'm just not going to even suggest it. I'm going to suggest that you guys watch the video, hit the thumbs up, and leave a comment. Really does help. But guys, that is going to be it for this week. Let us know what you think in the Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. And enjoy the week. But until next time, for Deathblow, I am the Blevinson. Guys, remember, it's noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now guides my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
You get it? Like adapt or dive, like adapt or die. You get it? Because it's like it sounds. I get it.
Can you just
it.
explain it for another 20
You
minutes?
don't get it. It's too highbrow for you guys.